Hi there, everybody. Welcome along to EFL Debate. We're talking about Carlisle United in a summer deep dive, and we'll get on to football matters in a few moments. But there's been some sad news at Brunton Park with the very unfortunate passing of club legend David Wilkes. That's made this a real tough time for a lot of United supporters. And even though I never knew David myself, and I can see how loved he was. So I'd like to, from my own point of view, pass on my condolences to his friends and to his families and to everyone connected with Carlisle United Football Club. I wanted to come to Lee Rooney from the Brunton Bugle podcast to talk about David Wilkes and really share some of your memories with him and his association with the football club.
Hi, Gab. Yeah, it was really sad news when it broke yesterday. So unexpected. Only 59 years old. David, the impact he made on the club over the last 33 years, can't be overstated. I'm sure Ross will agree on that in terms of what he's done in terms of developing young players. He's off the scale. He actually came in originally, I think, as like a football in the community sort of coach and ended up youth team coach. We put together a list just before, and I'm going to try and load it up here, of some of the players that he helped develop in the time he was there. This is just to list off a few. So Matt Jansen, Roy Delap, Scott Doby, Paul Reed, Jared Branthwaite, Dean Henderson, James Trafford, Kyle Dempsey, Paul Berrettine, Tony Craig, Owen Moxon in his original spell in the youth team, Taylor Charters, Jack Ellis, Pat Brough, Danny Granger. That's just some. That's not all. He was in charge of the youth team in the 90s, and that was when the likes of Jansen and Delap came through. And we had an incredible youth team. We had a few players who came through, like Will Varty and Richard Progas, who went on to have decent Football League careers as well. They did really well that time. He then briefly had 2 years as sort of, not manager, but director of coaching. It was a weird setup in that him and John Halpin, another club legend, were joint managers with Michael Knighton. Crazy time. It doesn't even worth covering. It was very unfair, actually, Halpin and Wilkes, because they're so really well-liked blokes that to do that to them, put them in that situation. No one hates them for it, basically. So, it was quite sad. He ended up leaving after the Jimmy Glass game. He spent about 5 or 6 years away from the club. I think the likes of Huddersfield and Newcastle, I think, did a bit of Gretna as well. Simo brought him back along with Halpin around about 2005, and he'd been in various roles in the academy for the last, basically 18 years, essentially. The most recent was head of academy coaching. I was lucky enough that I worked there for 2 years at the club in the media team and got to work closer with David in terms of preparing the academy bushes out to all the families and kids in the summer. You could not want to meet a more lovely and genuine bloke. And the thing that's really stood out in all the tributes and all the comments online about him is how many players who were in the academy but never made it as a player. And non-league at Workington or Penrith or Carlisle City, something like, who just disappeared out of the game. We all came back and said he was brilliant for me. Parents of those kids as well. It just shows what an incredible bloke he was. And it's a very sad time for the club. He's passing, and I'm sure he's going to be really sorely missed by a lot of people. And I've talked for a few minutes there. I'm sure Ross would agree with what I said there.
Yeah, can't disagree with any of it. I know a few people who knew him well. I sent a few texts out today just saying like, oh, is there anything you want mentioned? Because I knew we were going to be talking about him today. And the words that came up in everyone was, what a nice bloke, what a great coach. And gentleman kept coming up over and over and over again. Every interaction I ever had with him, when I was a kid, he helped with John Halpin soccer schools. I can remember him then, just being a nice man. It's such a shame that you lost him. We've lost him at 59-year-old. It's no age.
No, I never knew him myself, Ross, as I mentioned, but I watched the video that went round on social media of him,
the singing,
celebrating by singing karaoke into a water bottle. It shows he must have been a real character as well.
Yeah, just thing. Mark Birch, one of the other youth coaches, put a tweet up earlier on just saying that when Mark was trying to work Dave Wilkes was a nightmare, just wanting to mess about. But when Dave was working, he was dead serious, and that's kind of what you want around the place, isn't it? You want someone who wants it to be fun and that takes their job seriously when they're doing it. So yeah, it'll be a big loss.
Yeah, a huge loss. I suppose the elephant in the room is that we don't know what caused David Wilkes to pass, and I think it would be wrong for us to speculate at this point. But I feel like it would be appropriate for me to say that I hope he knew that he was loved, how much he was loved, because he's got an incredible legacy at Carlisle United. And I wish I could have got to know him from what you lot have talked about him and what I've the little bits that I've seen. So a huge loss to Carlisle United. Rest in peace, and just to reiterate, thoughts with his friends, his family, and everyone connected with Carlisle United. We will sort of move on to the footballing side of things then, Ross. Such is life. You've kind of got to take the footballing side and life in equal measure, because life can come up at us so quickly. So in that vein, you must have been so proud and so delighted to see the Blues win promotion at Wembley. Yeah,
one of my favourite days as a Carlisle fan. I've been to Wembley before. We've won the LDV or in auto windscreens in its various guises there before, and it was always special. But that felt so much more important. We were the better side, certainly from half time in that game, so it felt it was deserved as well. There was a lovely little moment because I took my kids to Wembley as well, and they're kind of into football, but they're not. They won't watch a full 90-minute game yet because they're only young. And there was a little moment where my 9-year-old just, when Patrick scored, and I saw it click. I saw something click of like, this is what it's about. This is the thing, and the emotion of it. It was absolutely brilliant. And credit to what Simo's done, because I don't think anyone else could have dragged this club in the direction it has gone in the last 18 months.
Yeah, do you echo those thoughts, Lee?
I'm muting myself there because I've been trying to get my camera's been playing up at the start, so I've been trying to get it to work again. 100%. Yeah. I anyone who's a bit of a ground up and might use the Footballology app to record all the grounds they go to, and when you go in your profile on that, you can put in your first ever game, but you can also put in your favorite ever game. My favorite ever game in the past was Carlisle United 3, Leeds United 1, when we beat them at Brunton Park in 2007 to go top of League One at the time. Well, there's a new game at the top of that now, and that was Wembley. Generally, just the moment, and Ross echoes it, he's absolutely right that those other visits were great. Right? We won when we were in the Johnson's Paint in 2010 and 2011. I was working in the club then. I was in the media team, so it was a different experience for me being a fan. I was in the press box and behind the scenes.
Sure.
This was being there as a fan, right in the celebrated Patrick. I was where the little entrance bit is there. My camera's frozen again. I'll knock it off for a little bit. Yeah, it was just the feeling when that ball hit the back of the net from Patrick. I don't think I've celebrated a goal as much as that in my life. I just went nuts, and I actually look at it and I took a photo. It's on my Instagram page. I took a photo of my heart monitor, my watch, and it was up to 134. So it probably tells you how excited we got at that point. I didn't dare look at it during the penalties because that was horrifying. But as a day out, it was just, look, it was 25 degrees. It was beautiful sunshine. We were in the shade. So it was nice. We weren't getting too burnt or anything for most of the day. The atmosphere was amazing. I got to say, Stockport fans were brilliant as well. All the Stockport fans I met that day were like so. I think they were just loving the fact that they were involved back in something like that, having spent 6 years in the National League North. So them, it was very exciting, and there was no bitterness. There was no banging on about attendances, not mentioning any other clubs there. It was kind of like, the amount of clubs saying we would have took 30,000. I think you can guess which club I'm talking about here. Yeah. Well, both clubs took down 15,000 on a Sunday, lunchtime kickoff, which was utterly ridiculous, frankly. Couldn't actually get down by train from Carlisle to take that many down, and the atmosphere. it's been like that all season, hasn't it, Ross? Really, the difference in Summer's coming, and I think for that, it's not just Simmer that deserves credit. I have to give a lot of credit. There's a group of young lads that call themselves the Warwick Road Enders, like mid-teens, and what a job they've done in terms of lifting the atmosphere in there and getting young people interested in watching the club again. And they've done some brilliant stuff like painting the crush barriers in the Warwick Road End blue and they've taken a bit of ownership of their stand basically. And yeah, the difference in terms of how that's lifted the atmosphere has been amazing. And the pinnacle was when Taylor Charters steps up and, you know, it sums it up that, you know, Holy actually went right on two of the penalties, to be fair. I can't remember his name is, what the Stockport keeper's name is. He went...
Oh, Ben Hinchliffe.
It's Hinchliffe, isn't it? Yeah, I got told that by the guys on the...
Yeah, be careful. Yeah, I got caught out for that one as well.
Because I kept calling that. They're like, no, it's Hinchliffe. Okay.
Yeah, it's Andy Hinchcliffe. It's I mean, Hinchcliffe is quite an unusual surname, so you should only have one, but there's a variation of it, which
exactly.
Real careful.
But yeah, the thing is, he went the wrong way in all 5 penalties, and that's no coincidence. If you look, I mean, the only one who didn't really wait for him to go away was Moxon, really, who just sort of, you know, passed it into the top corner almost. The rest of them, Dennis waits for him to move. Mellish just smashes it because that's John Mellish, and he's just, you know, telling the Stockport pans where to go afterwards was amusing as well. And then, like I said, Edmondson was the coolest of a lot. He just like, yeah, you've moved, I'm going to slot it in here. Charters again, waits for him to move slightly, and then just slots it in the corner. That comes from practice, and again, that's what Simmer's done. But yeah, in terms of the day overall, best I've had watching Carlisle for a long, long time, and Simmer deserves pretty much all the credit for that. But there you go.
Yeah, absolutely. Ross, I've got a really big question for you on Carlisle United now, which is, we know that Paul Simpson is absolutely ready to be a League One manager. Are Carlisle United ready to be a League One club?
With him, yes. A lot of things have got a lot better. I think the revenues are going to go up massively. I queued 2.5 hours to get this top yesterday, which...
You got it. I thought you got it.
That's never happened, does it? Yeah. Should have got it from DH. Lee, it's never been that busy, has it? It's just the amount of people that were there. No. It was queued round from the club shop. I mean, you won't know Carlisle United, but there's a club shops on the front of the road, and then there's a road into the ground, and it was the whole road into the ground was full of a queue, and it was all the way around the side of the paddock.
And it should be noted that was season tickets only. It was a special thing for season ticket holders to go and buy.
And everyone that was in there is buying 4, 5, 6 shirts. So that's like literally everybody who walked in, because I think it's partially because you get 10% off as well. But yeah, there was people in there. I bought shirts for sort of 6 or 7 people. The lad in front of me had bought 8 tops. The lad behind me had 4 in his hand. So the club's income is going to go up massively. Plus, we've got the advantage this year of there's a lot of big clubs in this league, so there's a lot of clubs going to be bringing 1,200, 1,500, 2,000 down here, up here. Sorry, so all that's going to help. If we can keep those attendances up around 8, 9, 10,000, which if we do well, we certainly can. It could be a real opportunity for this club to get, because I think we are probably a League One team in terms of where we should be if everything was run correctly.
Yeah, well, it's that point that I really want to sort of explore with you, Ross, because and Lee, because I think that Carlisle United having Paul Simpson has clearly elevated the club structurally to a level where it can compete and even better some of the League Two clubs. But in League One, you go up a level, there are clubs that are better across the board. And part of me, Lee, worries that actually the club is relying a little bit too heavily on one man, or maybe 2 men if you go to Paul Simpson and Greg Abbott. You know, is it possible that have the rest of the board of directors and the club themselves raised their game, or is it the work of Simo and Abbott kind of masking, you know, other deficiencies?
I think off the field, actually, there has been a raising of levels in terms of what's been done. Ross has mentioned there the new kit. It's fantastic. The away kit is something else. I think we all agree. It's. I mean, he's got it there. I mean, this is. I mean, it's you know, it's basically. See, the camera thinks it's that offensive. It blurred it out there. That tells you.
Yeah.
You don't want to see
it. It's like basically if you put. We've got blue shorts for the home kit. And I keep saying, wear the blue shorts for it. You look like Bertie Bassett, basically. Yeah. So that's one for one for the teenagers there. Yeah. No, off the pitch, you know, look at the way commercially we're doing in terms of the kit. The club shop has just had its first upgrade, full upgrade, I think at least. It's had a little upgrade since then, but since I last did it when I was working there, and I didn't have much to work with back then, to put it bluntly. It looks fantastic. It's a big improvement. And then you look at some of the stuff in terms of on the match day now, like Ross, you'd say like 2-3 years ago, no one would be bothered to get down to the ground early, would they? No. I mean, obviously it was COVID back then, so it's a bit different, but let's say 4-5 years ago, no one was getting down to the ground early to get in the bar. I mean, the bars would be full, but they stink. They were all sweaty. It was, you could barely breathe in them. They were dated. There was nothing outside the ground except one burger van, basically. A couple of.
Have you been in marketing for Longley?
No, well, that's how it was. Now you go down on a match day, 1:30. There's already at least 50 to 100 people there enjoying the bars and the food bits. Some of the games this season, it's been big crowds. But I mean, the Tranmere game, there's an amazing photo when we did the 10 for 10. So it's 13k crowd we got for that game on was it Good Friday, that one? I think it was, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was Good Friday, was it Tranmere? The crowd, you could barely move outside behind the main stand. The crowd was huge. Like the Tranmere bus turned up late because there was traffic issues. We drove up, me and my mate Mike, actually, and we got stuck in a bit of it. But the Tranmere bus had to somehow squeeze through this crowd to get through because it was just that rammed. And that wasn't a single one-off occurrence last season. There was so many games where there was such a huge amount of people out there, and the club have recognised how important it is to create that feeling of getting people down and feeling part of the club. And what you've seen is actually they're expanding that fan zone even further, because I think originally there was all kinds of like, oh, but that's going to mean we're going to lose a bit of parking and stuff like that. It's like, stop the parking, get people to walk. What you want people to walk down and have a pint so they're not driving. Basically, it's like, well, actually, if I can go down and have a pint, I'll leave my car at home, or I'll, one mate will give us a lift and we'll park somewhere away from the ground or something. That's the big difference. And I'm pretty sure all the revenues are up massively in terms of that. Is there still a bit to go? Yeah, I think off the field in terms of training, that's a massive issue, and Simo recognises that. But there's potential opportunities in the possible near future, I think, to do something with a former school site nearby. I think at the moment it's considered unsuitable. But actually, overall, I think at some point that will probably end up being where they look to move to, basically, in terms of that. So hopefully that'll solve. But yeah, off the field, actually, I think, look, the owners are not perfect, and there's still a lot of fans who don't like them. I don't think there's anything malicious in terms of the owners. I think most fans recognise that. I think fans feel they're a bit old, grey and stale, I think is the view on them. I think there's a hell of a lot of loyalty there from them, and they've backed the club as much as they can in terms of money. What I'd say is, in terms of chief executive Nigel Clibbins, I think has done a brilliant job in the circumstances. The work he's done off the field is really good and really impressive, and he's very transparent in terms of what's happening finances wise and what's happening. The reports he does, the guys who do the Price of Football podcast and stuff like that.
Kieran Maguire.
He always raves about. He gives our reports 10 out of 10 every year. Says that's the way football clubs should do it. Be honest, be clear on where things are. Be clear on where you've got challenges and issues. Don't hide from it. Don't be hiding things behind, closed doors and stuff.
Well, we don't even get carried away with profits, do we? In those, he always goes, okay, we've made 750 grand, but some of that's going here, some of that's going to go there.
We've got rainy day funds and things like that now, so we accept we're going to lose money some seasons because we're a low league football club.
Yeah,
no low league football club runs at a profit. I mean, we were talking just before in our pod about the fact we've got Fleetwood on the opening day. Lord knows what's going to happen with them this season. With their issues in terms of the owner. Let's be honest, the only reason they're in League One is because of him, because of the amount of money he puts in. They don't get the crowds to justify it. They don't really get the player sales beyond what they got for Jamie Vardy to justify it. So they potentially in a lot of trouble this season. We're running on a fairly even keel. It's not perfect, but show me a football league club that is perfect in terms of that. You've got to take risks occasionally. So off the field, I've talked for quite a bit about that there, but it is. it's getting better. It's not perfect, but it's getting better. And I think the fans are buying into that a bit. And I think there's a little bit of, in terms of having a bit of pride of where you're from as well, comes into that. And it's connecting off the field, on the field, but you've also got a lot of Cumbrian lads in the squad. And I think people buy that. Cumbrian lads in the squad and 2 Cumbrians as the management team effectively in Simo and Gavin Skelton, who doesn't probably get the credit he deserves at times. So yeah, off the field, it is improving.
Yeah, well, that's certainly a big positive. Glad you mentioned Nigel Clibbens there, because I think from our conversations with Ross, when we were kind of going quite deep into the various problems Carlisle had in previous times, Nigel Clibbens always seemed to be the one sort of the rose among thorns, if you like. So I'm glad that he's got an opportunity to work in a slightly more stable circumstances. I think the financial situation could be improved further, Ross, if the club could get some of the percentages that we talked about off air, because it's an interesting summer for Carlisle United, because you've got a fair percentage resale clause in for Dean Henderson. I think that hopefully make a few bob from him, from Jared Branthwaite as well, and James Trafford, who's going to Burnley. And I don't want to go too sort of precise on the details, but I think it's fair to say there's a few 7-figure fees in there that could really help Carlisle and give them £5, £6, £7 million this summer if they sort of come together as we expect. So that could go a long way to clearing off the debts and even help them back those ownership issues that we've been talking about.
I think one of the biggest things for this football club is getting short of Philip Day and Pure Pay. And even though Philip Day allegedly doesn't own Pure Pay, it's his money that we owe, and we owe it to Pure Pay. They have behaved. Look, I'll give them some credit. They stepped in at a time where the club needed money, and they loaned us money. Ever since their sort of semi-takeover fell apart, I think correctly. I think that's one of the things I'll give the trust credit for. I think they stepped in and blocked that. We're not going to go into too much detail on it, but it was a bit of a shambles of a takeover attempt where he wasn't really taking over because he didn't want to comply with the ownership tests and things like that. That ever since that, they have behaved disgracefully, in my opinion. They have refused to communicate with the club. They have refused to negotiate. They don't reply to calls. They don't reply to emails. We basically owe them this money that they could call in, and they are just sitting and not discussing any sort of repayment plan, despite repeated attempts by the club.
Yeah. I wonder with that, Ross. I always thought this. Sorry to chip in.
Go on.
I wonder if it's kind of a case of it's convenient for them to not agree some sort of payment plan.
Absolutely,
because I almost wonder if they think, well, one, they're getting a bit of interest, which we know, but that's just the way the deal's done. But I think, two, there may be a case of if they agree some sort of deal with us where we pay X chunk a season, if we then have a bad season and we struggle to pay it, they then potentially have to call that in and then have to somehow force some sort of takeover of a club that they don't really want to own. Is it easy for them to say, let's just sit on it? We know they're potentially getting this money from these sell-ons. Once we got that, we'll go to them, right, do you want to pay us it back now? Thank you very much. Goodbye. We're off. That's just a fear in my head. I've seen someone post about that on one of the message boards as well. It kind of makes sense, but I agree with you. It'd be nice for them just
say that.
Correspondence with the club. And it's difficult because they don't want to say that because it's it basically sounds like they're sitting and waiting. Then basically, if it doesn't come, then what do you do? But yeah, I kind of feel like there's a bit of a. No one seems to know what's going on. I mean, ever since he who shall not be named has left, things have improved massively. And I wonder
when
if
did you have Voldemort to the club?
I'm being himself.
Very, very kind to call him that. I do wonder if they almost look and think, yeah, he wasn't actually very good at running this, was he?
Yeah.
They got rid of him and everything's gone well now. I wonder.
Yeah, he's on, if you haven't seen, he's on Under the Cosh in a couple of weeks, and they put out a thing asking for questions, and it's essentially been taken over by Lincoln and Carlisle fans. If you look at the replies, it's quite fun.
Yeah. Do you still worry about the salt and pepper on that? You said one of the most ridiculous comments he made was, "I'm not worried about relegation. I'm more worried about the salt and pepper on my chips," which is one like, who the hell puts salt and pepper on their chips? Salt and vinegar, you clown. But we're well rid of him anyway. We refuse to mention his name on our pod. If we want to mention it, someone has to warn me so I can put a clown noise over it on the clown car noise, because that's how popular it is. But yeah, we've seen the difference since he's gone. But sorry, I interjected in there with a point, but
that's fine. Yeah,
I think it's all relevant to where Carlisle United are at the moment. I mean, I suppose there's obviously the positive of some money coming into the club this summer via those sell-ons. We've also, I wanted to touch a bit more, Ross, on the impact that Greg Abbott has had as director of football, and that some of the nous that he's brought. We were talking off air about the fact that he's now at other games and a bit more of an active presence in terms of the scouting side of things.
Yeah, he's been brilliant. I think me and Lee have had discussions before he came in when we were talking about who would be a good fit for that role, and he was one of the names that came up quite a lot. I actually think, Chris Beach has gone to do it. I always thought Chris Beach would be good at that thing, because he could definitely spot a player, and he's gone to do that at Fylde now. But yeah, I think the fact he knows the club and he's well liked around the club, but he's also incredibly well liked around football. When he was the manager, he had great contacts at all levels, and we were getting players in that we probably shouldn't have been getting at the time, like Tom Lawrence, and was Lawrence and Ben Marshall was here under Abbott. A lot of players that probably were a bit good for the level, but he's well thought of. A bit similar to Simo getting Finn back this season, I think. Where Cooper knows him and rates him as a person and as a coach, so it goes, okay, he's in good hands. But yeah, I think he's good, and the fact that, as we said off air, our previous director of football was at every home game watching us and did all his scouting on Y Scout, and Greg going out and actually watching players and getting personality reports and things like that, which is exactly what you want your director of football to be doing, is doing that hard work for the manager, and then the manager can make his own decisions based on the list he provides.
Yeah, you've clearly offended Lee somewhere down the line.
Obviously, yeah.
Delicate fella. But I wanted to come back to you, Ross, on the state of play for Carlisle in terms of the squad. We were talking off air about the fact 17 players from last season are under contract.
Yes,
2 or 3 of those,
17, something like that.
Yeah, but 2 or 3 of those are maybe younger players that aren't expecting to start too many league games. So, you think 10 players could be needed this summer?
Sort of 9 or 10, I would think. Okay. Simo's already said we're going to go for a goalkeeper. We let Mick Kelly go, who seemed like a great lad, but I don't think he was really pushing Hawley for the first team spot, and I think he wants a bit more competition for that. Hawley's had a bit of, while we're on Hawley, he's had a bit of unfair stick. He's made a few errors this season, but I think generally he's been pretty solid. I think the biggest problem he's got is the stuff he's good at is the boring stuff, like catching crosses and things like that, whereas not spectacular saves. But anyway, off that.
I think that's interesting. Do you think you'll sign a first choice goalkeeper, or do you think you'll sign someone to push Hawley?
I don't know. It could be a weird one. I would have actually liked to have seen us go for Ripley, who's gone to Port Vale, I think, today. The ex-Morecambe keeper.
That would be a great signing, I think, definitely.
Yeah, but I don't know whether we'll go for a first choice or a second choice, to be honest. I think it might just be one of those ones where we see who's available. I think Simo differs quite a bit to Paul Gerrard on that, on the goalkeepers, which makes sense because he was a goalkeeper. So yeah, we're a little unsure on that. We definitely need a right back. We probably need a couple of centre backs because it looks like we're probably going to lose Morgan Feeney.
That's going to be a big loss, isn't
it? Depends who comes in. I think it's one of those ones that, yes, I'd love him to stay, but is he replaceable? Yeah, he is. And is he going for a good reason? Because he's going to clubs that are playing in Europe, is the rumour, in Scotland, so Hibs and Hearts.
I think you'd be more worried if you lost in that defence if you lost John Mellish, wouldn't you? Because we found last season replacing him in the role that he does in terms of getting up and down.
Well, it's the formation shifts as well, Lee, isn't it?
Yeah,
because Mellish allows 100%. You to go from one formation to another and keep.
We're doing that in both the home Stockport game and the game at Wembley. Mellish dropping into midfield just caused chaos for them.
And he's so much better at that role now than he used to be.
Yeah,
he used to just be under Beach. He was just utter chaos, and he'd get on the end of things in terms of goals. It was great. His technical ability is 100% improved, and I don't think he gets as much credit as he deserves for that. Actually, he's much better on the ball. He's not perfect, but he's a centre half at the end of the day. You know, that's his role really. But he's a lot better than he was on the ball, and he takes a little bit more care of it when he's got it. But yeah, replacing him will be a lot tougher. But thankfully, he's tied down for another season. And the talk I've heard is that he is basically, I think, like, he's quite happy to stay here almost for his career, from what I've heard, because he just loves being here. He genuinely loves being in the club, and he knows he's well liked here as well, from what I've been told. So, I mean,
I feel like unless Sunderland came in, I think he's. I
mean, that's the only one he'd go to. And I don't think his mum would let him leave anyway. No. If you follow her on Twitter, she's incredible. Yeah, she basically bullies him most of the time.
Yeah,
and the fans join in with it. It's hilarious. She's picking on him in a motherly way. So shall we say.
Couldn't imagine what it'd be like if my mum was on Twitter. I'd be very embarrassed.
She's the stereotypical embarrassing mum as well. She's great.
God,
she's incredible. Like when he does something stupid on the pitch, she calls him a clown and stuff like that. Yeah. So like when I think it was against Swindon when we scored that late winner. If you watch back the video, he gives, I think, 3 different Swindon players a slap on the back of the head when he's running off to celebrate. And she basically said you called him an idiot on Twitter for it. So yeah, but he would be much more difficult to play. I agree with Ross. I think I'd be gutted to see Feeney go, but then if Feeney were left and we signed Barkley as a replacement, I don't think I'd be as bothered, because actually I think Barkley's got a bit more ability on the ball than Feeney has.
I think Feeney's a better defender.
And
I think Feeney's more for the middle.
Yeah.
But Barkley's versatile. I don't know. That's the thing. Barkley, I think, is more of a right-sided centre-back who could also maybe play as a wing-back or in midfield. Whereas I think if you lost Feeney, I feel like you'd want to recruit a specialist middle centre-half.
We've got, and to be fair, another player probably doesn't get as much credit, Corey Whelan. Like, he was so dependable last season when he came in. There's a couple of games where he came on the left side of the back three where he had to fill in for Mellish, and he struggled a bit. But I think most players who played that role did. Whereas when he came in, when he came in for Feeney, he was great. Like, he genuinely, like, those playoff games, he was excellent. He didn't actually, if you look back at it, he barely put a foot wrong. He got a booked early on in that first game against Bradford away, and actually didn't do anything wrong after that. So I genuinely think it was a surprise when he got a new. Well, no one knew he had a trigger in his contract that he triggered, and it was a little bit of a surprise that he's staying. But actually, when you look back, you're like, you know what? Sometimes you need a player like that who's dependable and who doesn't complain when they have to sit on the bench for periods. Will come in and do a job. Is he up to League One? I don't know.
Didn't he?
I feel like with Corey Whelan in defence, and this is a bit of an outsider's hunch, but I feel like he's a bit of a rice in a curry sort of thing, where it's like you can put him in a defence, and he could do a job. But I don't know if he could be the main defensive linchpin that would really dominate the box.
It's hard to tell because he hasn't had. Starting. Yeah, but I mean, when he's coming, he's like. To be fair. Don't forget, Feeney missed about a third of last season with injuries, and Whelan slotted in for most of the. I mean, Barkley did for a bit as well, but Whelan's always come in and always done the job. The one issue with Whelan is he hasn't really got any pace, and that's the problem. Last season there was a game where we tried playing him in midfield away at Rochdale, and it was painful to watch him in that position. I felt for him because he looked like a fish out of water. But actually, when he plays in defence alongside Huntington, when Mellish does that bomb forward, they just shift over and it's a back four and there's no issues. So yeah, I like Whelan. Will he stay beyond this season? Possibly not, but he surprised all. We all thought he might have left at some point last season. Well, there you go. He's playing at Wembley in the final and he had a great game. So he was wrong a lot.
Yeah, I think again it kind of comes back to Simpson's coaching because and I think I've discussed this with you before, Ross. Lee was talking about John Mellish improving on the ball last season. I would like to go to Callum Guy and Jordan Gibson, where I think they're far better out of possession this season than maybe I would have associated them in previous campaigns.
I think Guy's positioning's improved massively. I think he's always been that box-to-box, get about the pitch kind of thing. But I think particularly since Moxon playing, and Moxon does that box-to-box thing and runs about a lot and wins the second balls, it's allowed Guy just to be the shield almost, and he just goes side to side. But his positioning's superb. The amount of balls he cuts out and breaks he stops and things like that.
A friend of mine christened him Ungilo Kante at one point last season, because he's that kind of player. He just gets about the pitch. And
can I steal that one, Lee?
You certainly can. You might want to give credit to @Mr. Ian Baker on Twitter, because he was the
Mr. Ian Baker. I'll make sure I'll
if you ever use it. But yeah, and to be fair, he's added goals to his games, hasn't he, Ross?
Yeah, finally.
And
I genuinely never thought
goals.
he'd score for us. He always seemed to snatch at shots, but he got one start of this season. I can't remember which game it was. It was an absolute scream. Wimbledon, yeah.
Wimbledon, and killed one from the top corner.
Yeah, left-footed, wasn't it? And then he always looks like scoring when he's hitting it now, doesn't he?
He got 4. So Wimbledon killed in top corner. Doncaster was a long-range one for the edge of the box. Salford, he smashed it into the bottom corner. And then Bradford in the playoff game. All 4 goals from outside the box. From a player who'd never scored a career goal before this season.
Yeah.
No, sorry. He scored 1 goal, for Blackpool in one of the trophy games, I think, for them. And that's it.
Yeah. Do you know what? And that kind of feeds into the point which, for me, which is that Simpson seems to be able to find new layers to the players that he works with, Ross. And I think that's going to be so important for Carlisle this season, because in terms of budget, they're going to be. I would go as far as to say it's likely to be a bottom 4 budget, or certainly not much.
I would,
So that's going to be really important, I think, to really maximise the value in this squad via the quality of the coaching.
Yeah, I think there is that. The recruitment last year I thought was very good. We signed a lot of players who maybe needed a chance. And that's rather than sort of doing we'll get a player who's played in the Championship and done X, Y, Z. It was Owen Moxon from Annan, playing part-time football. I don't know if any of the sport accounts mentioned it after Wembley, but he used to drive a van. He stepped in, and the improvement in him over the season's been good as well. He was excellent to kick off with, to be honest. He was way above what any of us expected of him. But I think his game management side of it has improved as the season's gone on. And
definitely improved a lot.
He's not getting caught out. He's not getting things. I think he leads. He might have been second assists behind Elliot Watt.
I think he went ahead.
He might be joint, actually.
I think he got joint after playoffs.
Yeah.
But he's also right up there for winning possession back in midfield as well, which kind of shows
that's
what
so impressive to be able to dominate both.
Yeah, and we'll do well to keep him in this summer, but because there's a lot of rumoured interest at Championship level. But if
dribbles as well as by hand too.
Dribbles, Do you think, Lee, that actually there's a possibility that Owen Moxon might actually end up getting better in League One, because Carlisle are going to be the underdogs, and that way of playing probably suits Owen Moxon more than actually having a lot of the ball and popping it around, because he seems to like those Hollywood passes and playing forward in behind quite early.
He likes to win the ball back, basically. Him and Guy do that job, and then you've usually got one of Gibson or McCalman sitting further forward. Obviously, McCalman's gone back to Leeds, but I'd say there's a half-decent chance he'll come back permanently, to be honest, because he seems to really like it, and we seem to have a good relationship with Leeds in terms of that kind of thing. I think he'll do really well in League One for us if he stays. But I'm with Ross. I personally am not convinced he will be here. I think Championship clubs will come for him, and the talk is from people who know him, that from his friends, that no offers come in. He's happy where he is for now. I think the club want to time down for a longer deal. It'd be nice to time down to one and maybe say, like, right, there's a £1 million release clause in there if a club from division above comes. you can go, look, if he went in the summer, no one's going to complain. We've got a brilliant season out of him.
Yeah.
You know, that's just the reality of football, and that money could then potentially be reused, you know, to reinvest in the squad and bring other players through. And actually, in Taylor Charters, we've got someone I think's capable of stepping up and maybe not doing quite as well. He's a slightly different player, but I mean, technically, he's as good a player as we've got. He's so good in the ball, and being left-footed offers you something different than midfield. I mean, he was keeping, until he got his hamstring injury against Crewe over Christmas, he was keeping Gibson out of the team. Gibson couldn't get a start. It was basically midfield free of Guy, Moxon, and Charters. And Charters was dominating. He's also very good in set pieces. I'd argue, actually, his corners are probably better than Moxon's. Because I think he didn't take that many, but I'm sure he had, in terms of setting up goals from corners, he wasn't that far off what Moxon managed. So, yeah, it's a weird one. I think we then got a player in Charters who can maybe step in and do it. We probably do need to add a couple more midfielders.
Do you think with Taylor Charters that he suits a 3-man midfield more than maybe a 2-man midfield? Or
I think
he could probably do either.
Yeah. He can do either. Yeah,
I think he can do either, but I think at the moment he suits the free, because if he plays as that furthest forward, he's got a bit of freedom. And we saw when he came on against Bradford in that first leg, he was just popping nice little balls around the corner, wasn't he? Little deft touches here and there. Yeah. Really nice stuff. I mean, he played a good 30, 40 minutes, 50 minutes of the playoff final at left wing back. Yeah, he's done that when he was on loan at Gateshead as well. And in fact, actually, there was a period this season where he was playing on the left of a front three, wasn't he? I'm sure he played. In fact, I think he played there against, because there was a period where Simo moved from playing 3-5-2 to 3-4-3 and basically just had Moxon and Guy sitting quite deep and dictating play there. And then you had either side of Dennis. In fact, it might have even been that game against Salford. It was Gibson and Charters either side.
Charters on the wing, yeah.
Yeah, and Charters basically played further forward. He's got a hell of a lot of ability. He's got a great ball in him, and getting tied down for another 2 years is a real plus, and he seems to be really happy as well. So, look, he's 21 and he's already got 60, 70 odd first appearances under his belt, and he's been injured for a bit of that as well, and he's had his spell at Gateshead too. So, I genuinely think he can be a really good player for us.
Yeah, I think that's the difference with Charters and Moxon. I think if a club came in for Charters, I think there's a chance we would keep him, but the difference is Charters is 21, 22, and Moxon's 25, 26. Moxon's going to have a shorter career and might need to jump and take that move. Whereas Charters might think, I'll get another 50 games under my belt and then move on.
I think if Moxon's going, I'd rather it was done earlier in the window than has ended up getting to 31st of August and bang, there he goes on the last day and we can't replace him, or we can't use the money from him to bring a couple of players in. And we saw a couple of years ago what happened with Aaron Hayden, losing him like the day of the first game.
The morning of the first game.
That genuinely crippled our season, basically, because he was such a big part of what we were.
You want to either keep your best players or lose them as early in the window as possible. Yeah. You don't want these things to sort of be dragging on. Yeah. Talking of losing players, Ross, Kristian Dennis has gone to Tranmere, and I want to sort of discuss Kristian Dennis with you because I think a lot of people from outside Brunton Park are maybe a little bit surprised that he didn't start more, especially at crunch points of the season, because there we'd look at it and think he scored 19 goals. Why would you not have your proven goal scorer starting up top? But Simo seemed to like starting Joe Garner or I suppose Ryan Edmondson there. So do you think there's a possibility that Carlisle missed the poaching instincts of Dennis, or do you feel like you can find better options?
I think anyone who scores 20 goals you're going to miss. I rate him. I think he's really good, and he was great around the place. He gave us some great moments. I don't think he's a player that Simo would have necessarily signed. He was here when Simo came in. He was excellent last season, but I think maybe League One. We seem to have this policy under Simo that when they get to Dennis's age, that they get a 1-year deal with an option. It's what Huntington's on. It's what Garner's on.
I think that's sensible, as well, because players can drop off so quickly,
dramatically. Yeah, and he'll for us, he'll have been on decent money as well. It's a relative term for us, but
he said though, Ross, didn't he? He turned down better money from us to go to Tranmere. Because it's closer to home and it suits him better, and that's. I think as you just said, Ross, we none of us are complaining. I think it's a move that suits everybody. we can say, look, we offered you something and we would have loved to have had you, but we can't justify giving you this much. Tranmere are offering you a bit closer to home. They really need a striker who can score goals. I mean, God, I've never seen such a toothless side last season as they were. So adding him to their squad, I think it's a fantastic sign for them, because he's actually a lot, as you say, Ross, he does a lot more off the ball than actually gets credit for.
Yeah,
he does lots of link play and stuff like that, and he's a nuisance. And we'll miss his hat stealing antics at Salford as well, which was a lovely thing with all the stewards after that goal. But yeah, I agree with you. I think it's a move that suits everyone, but I think he'll be well remembered for his time here.
Yeah.
Are you expecting another striker to come in?
Yeah, I would think probably one or two as a minimum.
If you believe the rumours, we'd allegedly been in talks with Andy Carroll, if you believe some of the rumours going on Carlisle, which is, I mean, I thought at first
those talks might have been, are you interested in him going no? But
no, yeah. It's like
he's going to Barrow instead.
Yeah, I heard this. I was like, that's mental. That's mental. And I thought, well, actually, the last club he was at, we're going to be playing this season, Reading. So it's not quite as mental as it sounds. But no, he won't be one of them. It's interesting because there's not that many names been linked this summer. There's a handful, but usually the rumour bill's a bit more excitable, and it's not been. At the moment, in terms of strikers, we've got Edmondson and Garner tied down. Patrick, I think he always sees himself as more of a winger anyway. He seems 50-50 on whether he'll stay. I hope he stays. I think he's a really good asset in terms of his pace. I think if you play a 4-3-3, he can be a great player. But we definitely probably need 2 or 3 more strikers.
Sorry, just on that, actually, Lee, do you think 4-3-3 is going to be the dominant formation?
No, I think we'll stick with 3. We'll stick with the 3 at the back for now. Especially, Armour's shown just how good he is at left wing back. I mean, he's been outstanding last season.
Yeah.
And if the reports are to be believed, basically, Forrest had said, you can have Finn back. We just want to check him out in pre-season.
You can have Finn back.
You can have Finn back for a second season. And I mean, he looked fantastic when he was fully fit. He really did. And to get that second hamstring injury was just so cruel at the time. But then we've got Jack Ellis. He's come through our youth academy, and he looks like a player who's been playing there for years. He's so comfortable on the ball, so confident. And actually, funny enough, we mentioned about getting another centre-back in you saying there, Gab. Well, Jack Ellis is actually a centre-back. He was a centre-back for the youth team for his whole time there. He could easily slot over to be that one in the back 3. He's still grown a bit. I think he's about 6'1", maybe 6'2" now. He could grow a little bit, and he's quite mobile and get up the pitch.
And if he's going to be good in 1v1s, then Lee, that could be quite a useful thing. So you could actually have Finn back as right wing back, and then you've got Jack Ellis as a candidate, maybe to start on the right of 3 and maybe protect the flank a little bit.
It's a big positive of what something the Simo has done. He's got a lot of players in who can play a lot of different positions and can slot in places. I mean, even Ryan Edmondson can play on wide in a front 3. I mean, I'm pretty sure you probably know this more than me, the Gab. I think he played right wing back for Port Vale at some point, Edmondson as well.
You might be right about that.
Briefly a couple of times. He could be added to the 7 or 8 players we had played right wing back last season. So,
do you think if he can stay fully fit this year, Edmondson could have a big season?
Yeah, I rate him.
I think me and Mike from the Bugle, when we left that game against Swindon when he scored that late equaliser, we were saying his injury might be a bit of a blessing for us, because I think if he'd stayed fully fit, I think he'd have scored a fair few goals, and we might have been worried about losing him in the summer. Because he's a big, tall lad, about 6'3", 6'4". He wins a lot in the air. He's good with the physical side, but he's also really mobile. Like he's a lot
quick.
He is quick. I think was it against Bradford in the playoff game where he just or maybe against Stockport, I think, in the league game. He completely caught them out with this burst. No, in fact, Stevenage, I'm thinking of Stevenage.
Stevenage.
Lad should have been sent off. And he completely caught that out because he just burned past him. He's like, whoa, had to haul him down. He should have been.
Give him 3 yards, didn't he?
Yeah. And I genuinely, my worry is, I don't know what in terms of triggers we have in Hughesdale. I hope we have got one, because my worry is you get to January and he's having a really good season. He's out of contract in the summer. The only positive there is he's 22, isn't he? So if we offered him a deal that was better than his existing one, we would get compensation whatever happened. So, I'm pretty sure Ross agrees with this, but I think he's a real talent, and I think we were unlucky that he got that bad shoulder injury when he did.
Yeah, what well, hopefully he can really kick on. What do you think of Amari Patrick at League One level, Ross? Because it's weird. I actually felt he was really good for the half season in 21-22, and then last season it felt like he was a little bit in and out, where there were moments where he sort of really threatened something, but he didn't quite pull together the consistency that you were hoping for, and it has me maybe questioning whether he'll have the impact that I'd maybe like for a prominent squad member in League One.
See, I like him. He got injured at the wrong times last season. He missed most of pre-season, and then when he did come back and started to look fit, he scored a couple of Hartlepool, was it away?
Yeah. He came on as a sub at Hartlepool, scored 2 goals, and then had to be subbed off because he got injured. So.
Yeah, and I think that was kind of the story of his season, and he never quite got going. But I'll say the biggest thing for me, even when he wasn't brilliant at times, he was never out of the game. He never hides. Okay. He never goes missing. He's always there, and you notice him being rubbish because he's there. He's there going to do that's might sound a little bit harsh, but I think that's a massive character thing, because we had a game, I can't remember which game it was, where Kimani Gordon played, and both him and Patrick had a terrible first half. But Gordon got subbed at half time because he'd been anonymous.
Gillingham. I think it was Gillingham away. Both. That was the one game I think they both played.
Yeah, that's really interesting, actually. I had in my head, I think because Amari Patrick, I know what Amari Patrick has in him. I know how good he can be. Yeah. I suppose I had it in my head from an outsider's point of view that maybe he's a little bit more enigmatic. But from what you're saying, he always does give it his all. It's just that, sometimes he can't sustain the quality.
What decision making sometimes.
Yeah, he's 100% his decision making. I'd agree with Ross on that. Like, there was the last game against Sutton, when he actually came to life in that game, their defense was terrified. They didn't know what to do. But his final decision in terms of the past couple of times, like, he was trying to do that extra little run. It's like, just play this on him. We'll play the pass. That's what we want. But what I'd agree with Ross, like, he doesn't go hiding. What I'd say is he's not the kind of player who'll go and chase the ball. He doesn't go chasing after it. He does need the ball played to him, but he doesn't hide from wanting the ball. He wants it. He's wanting the ball to be played to him. The issue is that he's not like an Edmondson who'll go or Garner who'll just go chasing after the ball when we lose it, which makes some fans think he's lazy. I don't think he's lazy. I think he's just playing as he is. He's a winger and he wants the ball played into him. He wants it played just in front of him so he can run onto it. So that's what's sometimes missing with Patrick. But yeah, I think, look, he didn't have a great time when he was at Burton, but I think he was played as a striker a lot, almost as a lone striker there, I think, sometimes. Forward, a little bit different than playing as a front two. With the front two, he can drift out wide occasionally. So I hope he stays, because I think, look, pace like that's very hard to find, and especially ones that can finish as well.
One of the things I will say as well is almost every club doubled upon him last season. When he got the ball, there was always a midfielder dropping in to help out the right back or the centre half every single time. So every club that came up here was identifying him as a threat, which says a lot about him.
Yeah, definitely.
At the moment, correct me if I'm wrong, but Jack Armour and John Mellish are the only left-footed players as options to play on the left of a back three. So I wanted to throw a question to Lee, which is, say, for example, John Mellish was to get injured. At the moment, it'd be a case of bringing in Jack Armour to left centre-back. Do you think you'll bring in a backup to Mellish so that you can continue to play Jack Armour as a left wing-back, which I think we've established is probably his best position?
Well, there is one name that you've missed out there, but it's not surprising you missed out because he wasn't with us last season. He was on loan at Allen. It's Max Kilsby. So he's the same age as Jack Ellis. He came through with Jack Ellis at the same time. We sent him out on loan for the season to Allen. He took a little bit of a while to find his way into the team at Allen, but he eventually did. And Peter Murphy obviously was looking after him then, and I think he slowly eased him in there.
Wickham and Accrington Stanley, Peter Murphy.
No,
ex-Carlisle.
Ex-Carlisle as in 400.
10 years, Irish international.
So he will get linked with the Carlisle manager's job very many times in the near future.
A bit like another
Yeah. So he went on loan there and he eventually got into the team. He went there as a centre-back, but he's left-footed, but he played a lot as a left-back, but I think he's played in both roles for them. And he managed to get, I think, 7 goals in 35 games in. He had like a real goal scoring streak. And then he scored, if you look it up, he scored a brilliant goal in the playoffs, I think, against, who was it against?
Two good goals.
It wasn't Clyde, it was Dumbarton, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Dumbarton he scored the one against. And it was an unbelievable strike, like smashed it into the top corner off a corner. And he really came of age. So the question is, I guess Simo will have a look in pre-season and see where he's at. It might be a case of, right, we'll set him out on loan to a National League or a League Two club if we can, to get a bit more game time and experience. But he's looked like maybe a potentially an option. The fact that he can play left back and left centre back shows that maybe he could play that role of Mellish. We tried Armour in a game against Sutton on the last day as a left-sided centre back, and Jack Robinson, who was on loan, slotted in. Didn't really work. I think Armour can play there eventually, but at the moment, I don't think it's quite his role. So, yeah, I think there's a chance we'll look to sign at least one left-sided cover player, basically, depending on how Kilsby does in pre-season. But we've shown we can also switch to the 4-3-3 if we actually really need to as well. So there's always that's an option.
The only problem is you bring in someone who knows they're not going to be a starter, because I don't think Mellish or Armour are going to get dropped short.
You want to go for a young profile, I think, for that sort of position. Someone that's kind of just developing and not expecting to start too many games.
Yeah. Or someone who can play both sides, preferably.
Yeah, absolutely. How big a season do you think? How big a contribution do you think Jack Armour can have in League One next year?
Huge. He's excellent, so consistent. He's minimum 7 out of 10 every week.
His crossing's got a lot better as well. Actually,
his crossing's got a lot better. He's for a lad who, what is he, 21?
22 now.
22.
He only turned 22 in April.
He's played, he must have played 80, 90 games for us.
130 games in all competitions. He's only, like I said, he's only 22, and he's just signed a 3-year deal. So
yeah, he looks like he just looks like a player that's played that many games.
Yeah. Well, just to sort of jump in on what Lee said there, to get a player of his talent tied down to a 3-year contract, that's exactly the sort of thing that you were talking about a couple of years ago, Ross. You know, committing to your big assets and giving them that security.
Yeah, and you can get them on, I don't know what wage he's on, but you can get them on slightly lower wages if you go, all right, we're going to give you 4 years. You can go and get a mortgage. You can go and get this, that, and the other, because you know where you're going to be for 4 years, and you're not worried about if you get injured at any point, you're gone. And that helps them. It helps them settle in the area, and it helps everything. I think we've got a lot of lads sort of Manchester area, which I think Jack's one of them. He's Preston lad, yeah. I think we've got, I think Guy, Patrick, and Armour all live in Preston, and it's only an hour.
That's a long commute. It was only an hour.
An hour and 10, hour and 20. Depends how you drive.
Yeah,
it's an hour and 3.
That's everything. But there's not many police cars after Lancaster. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Once you're into Cumbria, you don't need to worry about how fast you're going.
No.
There's that. There's a few Manchester based as well, which is an hour and a half. So yeah, I think there's that's built a bit of camaraderie. You've seen Dennis and Devitt were in the Manchester car school with Corey Whelan and one of the others. I can't remember who the other one was. But yeah, they were. You could see that's built relationships on all the little videos that Andy and Amy have been doing, behind the scenes videos and things, and that's good. And it's, while we're on Devitt, just a shame how it's ended for him. If he wants to keep playing, I hope he can find a club. But if not, I hope we can find some sort of role for him somewhere within this club, because he's.
I mean, the few occasions he did play last season, like the quality he still had on the ball. I mean, he scored like a 25-yarder into the top corner at Crewway that smashed off the bar. I think it was the game against Rochdale, the one where they nearly beat us.
Yeah, 3-3.
And he came on as a sub in that one, and he played this unbelievable side volley pass to help set up, I think, was our second goal in the comeback in that. And and you thought, oh God, a fully fit Jamie Devitt, how good would he be in this team? It just wasn't to be. But around the club, he had such an impact, and all the youth players, well, like saying, how big an impact he had on them as well. So, yeah, I hope he stays in the game in some way, shape, or form. And if it's with us, brilliant, because he can be a really big asset. And I think Simo's kind of hinted at that, hasn't he? Look, he's got to. I think he basically said Devitt's got a decision to make as to what he wants to do next, because the hamstring tear he's got, he's not going to be fit until the end of August. By then, all the clubs are tight play. I think to me, it looks most likely a non-league move maybe for him. I mean, there's been a few rumours, and I don't know if they're true, that Workington are keen, because him and Danny Granger were best mates when the club, and obviously Danny Granger's manager at Workington. And I think he almost says to him, look, come and play for me. It's only a bit of extra money, but you don't have to play every week or something, but you'll get your game time, and then maybe you can do a bit of coaching up at the club as well or something like that, possibly. That's the rumours I've heard. I don't know what truth there is in it, but I mean, he'd be an unbelievable player for Workington's level. I mean, the pitches would worry me with his injury issues, but yeah, he'd be unbelievable at that level.
Yeah, well, hopefully he can get the right move for this sort of phase of his career. Lee, Ross was saying there that Carlisle are going to need 9 or 10 signings. Yeah. How many of those do you think have got to come in and really improve the first best 11?
It's a good question. I mean, how much of the best 11 have we lost? It would be the first question. I mean, you look in terms of up front, you've lost Dennis, but we're kind of in agreement. We probably would have to.
Joe Garner was probably starting more often.
Joe Garner was, and he's not going to get as many goals, but you know what kind of player he is, and he brings other players into play as well, the way he plays. So that's useful in that sense. How many? I'd say maybe 2 or 3, because I think the core's still there. Thomas Howley's going to start in goals, I think, for the start of the season. I can't see that changing anytime soon. I've heard a few people say, the Simon wants to get rid of him. I don't think he does. I think he's quite happy with the job he does at the moment. Defense-wise, we definitely need another midfielder. But actually, if Moxon does stay, well, you've got Moxon, Charters, Guy, and Gibson. And you've got basically, you've got 4 of your
potentially McCalman.
McCalman possibly come back. I don't know how Kai Nugent's going to do. He had a really good loan spell at Workington. I think he's still a little bit slight, so I think he's probably going to have another loan spell somewhere, probably to build himself
National League sort of level.
Maybe back to Workington now. They're at a slightly higher level. Possibly go to Annan as well. No, they're just
below that.
Yeah, so they've moved up a level, but they're at a slightly better level now. Maybe one. I don't think midfield actually is much of a concern. I think what we need to sort the right wing back issue out. So hopefully we can get back. Great. We probably need another centre back to cover if Feeney goes. Even if Barkley does come in, we probably need one more there. I think maybe just need a little bit more depth in midfield. I think attack's where we need a bit more depth, and not just in terms of a striker. I think we could maybe do with a couple of wingers to give us some variety, so we can switch to that 4-3-3 and other formations a bit easier.
But then you bring in a winger; they've got to be able to play in another position in the 3-5-2. So do you bring in a wide forward who could also play up top? Do you bring in a winger who could also play as a wing back? I think you've got to think about how they'd come into the 3-5-2. That's going to be
that is possibly the way you got to look at it. But I think we're at a higher level now. We need to have a bit more quality, and we maybe need to have someone who's actually is a quality winger as well, because they've already got Patrick, who, if he stays, you can play there. But if you get another one, you then give yourself a good option to think, right, well, let's actually play a 4-3-3. We can justify doing it now instead of trying, fit a few players in here and there. It seems to me that Simo fancies Gibson more as a central midfielder probably than a winger at the moment. And I don't mind that, because I think he's got real ability in that role. But yeah, I feel like probably 2 or 3, and it'll depend on the loadies we can get in as well. Because I'm sure you probably talked on my camera. My laptop decided to restart itself just before you were talking about load time and stuff. Well, I think you might have already covered this, but Greg Abbott, when we were last in League One, the quality of loan signing you could get in was unbelievable. When you're in League Two, it's a lot tougher to get that real quality loan signing, and the Premier League clubs don't really want to send that kind of player down to you most of the time. League One level, suddenly you're getting that slightly better standard, and I'm sure Greg is already spending most of the summer ringing up all kinds of people. I'm sure Simo's...
Well, Scott Banks from Crystal Palace is one, and I think that'd be an excellent addition. But again, and a little bit similar to Amari Patrick, Scott Banks is an attacking midfielder who can also play wide. I don't see him fitting into a 3-5-2, so that would be a slight sort of question mark for me.
But then it's the challenge again of maybe that player saying, right, show us that we can actually play 3-4-3 here. You could play as one of the wingers then, and then you just have Moxon and guys sitting and doing their job, and you've got that front three causing problems.
You've got enough energy in there with Moxon and Guy to cover the midfield ground that you need to. So maybe you could get away with another one.
And if you do that, you can always put Charters as one of your wingers potentially. And just when you think, right, we need to sit a bit deeper, drop him in. Or Gibson, you drop in now and do that. We're so flexible in the way we play it. It actually is a real bonus for us, because teams sometimes like, well, they've started with a 3-5-2. We know they're going to switch to 4-3-3 at some point when Mellish into midfield. How do we prepare ourselves for that? It causes a bit of organised chaos, really, isn't it? It's a bit of chaos in the head. But yeah, I kind of feel like maybe we need 2 or 3 more, and I'm kind of hoping we can get some good loanees in, and maybe Simo can have a word with his old mate Steve at Manchester United as well, and see if he can lend us a couple of good youngsters too.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds good. Yeah, well, I think it's really exciting for Carlisle to have this opportunity in League One. Where do you see Carlisle within the division? I mean, it's difficult to say at the moment, Ross, isn't it? Because you're saying there's another 9 or 10 additions that need to come in, but from what Lee's saying, it's only 2 or 3 that have got to really improve the starting 11. So, yeah, where do you see Carlisle in terms of League One?
I'll be happy with anywhere above that relegation zone, to be honest. Probably similar to where I predicted us this season, which is sort of lower mid-table kind of thing, is kind of where I would probably see this thing. I think there's a few clubs with financial problems in League One, a few clubs that need a bit of a reset that might have a struggle, and I think we're on the right. We've got a bit of consistency about us. With the right additions, I think we'll be fine. I think we're one of those rare clubs that's come through the playoffs. I don't think that'll hurt us too much in terms of where we end up landing, because no one's really recruited much in League One. Was it you I was talking to the other day, Lee, where you said there's only like 4 or 5 clubs in League One had signed anyone?
Yeah, I think Nigel Clibbins actually said it. I saw one of the things possibly as well.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
I'm sure it went in the WhatsApp group at some point.
Yeah, I'm sure it did as well. So it's, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on, Ross. I was going to say,
go on, carry on, Lee.
I'm with Ross now. I think we'll be fine. I personally, if I was going to put my neck on the line right now, I'd say 10th or 11th. And that sounds quite bold. I genuinely, it sounds bold. I just think we've got that bit of momentum. I think we've got some players who didn't quite play as much last season, who might get to play a bit more, who I think have got more quality than people have seen. I genuinely think we're going to get some good signings, and I feel like we might surprise a few people.
If Moxon goes, you're going to have a 34-year-old Joe Garner up top. I mean,
we'll have more on top of that. We'll definitely get players in, and I just kind of feel like Simo's a smart enough coach to get the right people in for us. And I just look at League One, and I'm not quite as, maybe I'm being a bit bold and arrogant here, but I'm not quite as terrified. I think the very good team are very good, and I think that will worry me. But actually, I think some of the mid-table teams, you look around, and the nicest way possible, a lot of them are really terrified of them. It's just the way I feel. I feel like there's a lot of clubs in there that have been treading water for a while, in the way that we were in League Two for quite a while, and we actually did at League One towards the end. I remember I'm looking, and I think a lot of people are like, oh, they're not going to go down, but actually we dropped like a stone in our last season. So I feel like, look, we're not going to challenge the playoffs realistically, because it's a strong division at the top. I just feel like if we get a bit of momentum going, I think in terms of what's going off the pitch and the whole Cumbrian vibe around the club and the squad really helps as well. Having all that sort of core of really good young Cumbrian players in there, you know, off the top of my head, how many have we got in now? From goalkeeper Gabe Breeze, you've got Kai Nugent, Owen Moxon, Jack Ellis, Taylor Charters, Paul Huntington. I've probably missed someone in there, possibly. There's a couple who've left, but because Kilsby's from Newcastle, isn't he? So he doesn't count as a Cumbrian. But yes, so six or 7 in there basically in your core of your squad that all really get it, and the fans vibe off that, and the big followings we're getting, and that seems to lift the squad. There's a real positivity in terms of the fans. You know, look, off the pitch there's still issues, but yeah, that's just me right now. To be honest, ask me in a few weeks' time, and if we've not really signed anyone, I might change my mind a little bit. I might drop it down a little bit more. But I kind of feel like I'm not as if we'd gone up under Beach when we were potentially going for it, I probably would have predicted us to be down near the bottom, struggling. Right now, with him in charge, I'm a little bit more confident. Maybe 10 for 11 is a bit too bold. Maybe 13 for 14. Maybe I'm being a bit over the top.
No,
You've talked me
I
down
like,
now a bit, but yeah.
I like the optimism. What's the point of being a football fan if you can't
Yeah.
be optimistic when a ball hasn't been kicked?
I think one of the biggest things, just before we move on, is how patient everyone's been.
Yeah.
Compared to previous managers, I think by this point in the season, people would have, like, you get the usual things on Twitter where people are going like, "Why haven't we signed anyone?" Blah blah blah.
Yeah,
but
that's normally after the last game of the season.
Yeah, I think this season everyone's just like, "Oh well, it'll be fine. Tim will get it," and I think that's been the same at the games as well. There's been games where we've not been playing well, but the crowd hasn't turned.
No.
It's refreshing. It's refreshing, isn't it? Because I think modern football fandom, you know how uptight a lot of fans can be in the modern era, especially in this age, and I'm probably part of it as well, where it's like every decision that clubs make is kind of microanalyzed. And actually, I find it quite refreshing that Carlisle fans, because there's a club legend, because there's someone who's proven to be so trustworthy, so good at what they do, that fans can actually just relax a little bit and trust the people at the helm. So it's wonderful to see from that point of view. It really is. And let's hope there's not as much bad luck with injuries again next season as there was in the first half of last year.
It's something a lot of people forget. Like, we talk about needing to sign 10 players. We had 10 players out injured for pretty much like the whole first half of the season, at least. And even after that, it didn't improve that much. We still had 3 players out with ACL injuries for most of the season, and Joel Senior struggled when he came back at first because he clearly had to come, he didn't have the benefit of having a preseason to get himself up to speed. He had to come in, bang, that first game at Doncaster, and he made a mistake in the first few minutes that led to a goal, a real baptism of fire on his return. That like, to cope as we did. I mean, I remember, Gab, you were at the, was it the Grimsby game that you did?
I was at the Grimsby game, yeah.
We had 2 youth team players on the bench that game. 2 youth team players, I should say, aren't at the club anymore. Ryan Carr transferred to Ipswich in January. And
Duncan and Jaden Harris.
No, Nick Ballardo, I think, was, or maybe it wasn't Nick Ballardo. I'm sure it was Ryan Carr was one, and I think Nick Ballardo was the other.
I think you're right about Nick Ballardo, yeah.
Ballardo's left the club. He didn't get a contract at the end of the season, even though he made a handful of appearances during that spell. It's we basically had 16 first team players at that point, basically. So to actually come through that and do as well as we have, and you mentioned Duncan Iden there. I mean, Duncan Iden was just filling a squad space in the nicest way possible. He was there to cover if Armour potentially got injured or something, but I think we kind of realised quickly he wasn't really a left wing back, which hence why he left in December.
He's more of a left-sided centre back, actually.
Yeah, whereas Robinson came in, he was a left wing back. Well, actually, I quite like the look of Jack Robinson. I think I'm not sure we'll sign him permanently now. I think he'd do quite well at most League Two clubs. I think he looks a really lively player. So it's the injuries. Like first half of the season, I've never seen him like the hamstring injury, especially even like towards the end of the season. Look at that game against Leyton Orient, wasn't it? I think, Ross, where Morgan Feeney did his hamstring early on. Finn back on his first game back from his previous hamstring injury, does his hamstring again. Over Christmas, that game against Crewe, both Jack Ellis and Taylor Charters both did their hamstring in the same game. Mari Patrick did his hamstring at Hartlepool. It's always on rubbish pitches. I've noticed that.
Has it mainly been in-game injuries that Carlisle have had, or do you think they'll revamp the sports science department?
Yeah, it's been in-game. I mean, a couple of the, like Brennan Dickinson doing his ACL in the final training session before the start of the season. That's just bad luck, isn't it, really? That just happens. Yeah. Toby Silva, I think he did his hamstring in a preseason game or something, and he also got an ankle injury just blocking a shot, apparently. Just the way he hit his ankle did that in as well. And yeah, most of them have been in game. My theory is, and I've said this all the time, is that all the hamstring injuries picked up, I don't think we picked a single hamstring injury up from a home game other than Devitt. Now Devitt's an exception with that, really. That's just the way his body is, sadly. All the rest of them have been away games and usually on rubbish pitches. I'm not saying there's a correlation, but Salford's pitch is one of the worst I've seen last season. It was appalling. Like how that gets away with a Football League pitch, I don't know. They should take some lessons from Newport and what they've done with their pitch, because they've done an incredible job to turn that round into what looks like an actual football pitch now.
Sure.
But yeah.
Well, hopefully a little bit more lady luck shines on Carlisle's side in that department. But what a year to celebrate for Carlisle United in terms of the achievement under Paul Simpson, and hopefully another progressive campaign for the Cumbrians as the club looks to continue this rebuild up English football. Gents, such a pleasure to chat to you about Carlisle this evening. Just before I let you go, Lee, just talk to us about your podcast plans for Brunton Bugle next season.
Yeah, so we've actually got an episode, I think, coming out sometime tomorrow. Slightly delayed because of that sad news about David Wilkes. And then we're going to be back into it fairly soon. We've got 2 or 3 lined up in pre-season. We'll do our usual pre-season episode where we preview it. For some stupid reason, think it's a good idea to look at every single club and try and predict how they're going to do. Last season, our predictions weren't as bad as I got the playoff teams almost bang on. I think the only one I got wrong was Orient, who I had in the playoffs. And then in the top 3, I think I had Stockport in there. So they didn't finish there, but I had Northampton and someone else. So I think Mansfield's the one I got wildly wrong.
You've done quite well at that.
I was genuinely really pleased with my predictions. My relegated ones weren't particularly good. I think I got them wildly wrong. We all got those wrong. But anyway, yeah, so we'll be doing that. And then we'll just do what we've done previously is we've done a preview episode every Friday, usually, or for midweek on a Monday ahead of the games. We're looking at potentially splitting it into 2 episodes, a review and a preview, and doing something a little bit different because it's taking up a lot of time doing it all in one go, a review and preview in one episode. So we're going to try and make it a bit tighter next season. But yeah, anyone who wants to find it, bruntonbugle.com. We like to speak to opposition fans before games as well. So I think it's going to be better for us this season because last season there was an issue with a few clubs in that they don't have fans on the internet, like Salford and Harrogate. They don't have any fans, and oh God, I'm sick of the back teeth of Harrogate. We draw them in the cup, never beaten them. We thought we got rid of them. We thought we got away from them, and they've just followed us into League One via the Carabao Cup. Absolutely typical. But yeah, so it's going to be a lot better because I'm actually in a WhatsApp group now with a load of other League One pods. So hopefully I'll be able to get some people on there much easier. And there seems to be a bit more of a, to be honest, they're all bigger clubs, aren't they? Maybe Fleetwood might be the challenge this season. I don't know. But
you want to get Nappers on for Fleetwood. He's the one.
I'll make a note of that. But I mean, look, there's plenty of us. I mean, Burton was the one I thought we'd worry about. I thought, well, there's Ed, isn't there? You know,
Ed Walker,
Ed Walker knows everything about League One and League Two, like yourself. So
yeah, he's amazing.
So we'll hopefully get him on at some point. But yeah, same as it was last season. BruntonBugle.com and just search for Brunton Bugle on your podcast things and subscribe, and it's out there. So there you go.
Wonderful stuff. Thanks, folks. Thanks, Ross. Really appreciate your time. This has been EFL Debate, the Carlisle United Summer Deep Dive, and we'll see you again very soon.